All right, we're live. All right, welcome, Prescription for Liberty. Welcome back here. I am so excited. We've got a little patriotic music playing in the background. I'm going to turn that off.
Patriotic music. I couldn't help myself.
Exactly. So I'm so excited. We had a little technical difficulty. Kirk is up in Oregon somewhere, milking goats or doing whatever he's doing. So let me give you a little bit of background. My wife and I, over the past few weeks, have been going on a church tour of sorts. She and I are both Jewish. We just celebrated Rosh Hashanah. And we've been going around to churches because there are some brave evangelical pastors that have kept their churches open despite our governor's shutdown of churches. So we've been to various churches around. And 3 weeks ago, we went out to God Speak Church out in the San Fernando Valley. I think it's actually Conejo Valley, San Fernando Valley.
That's right, Conejo Valley.
And Pastor Rob McCoy, we went to support him. I'd never met him before, but I heard he was being harassed by local laws and so forth. So we went out there to support him, and boy, that guy is inspirational. And a friend of a friend introduced me to Kirk Cameron. And I'd heard of him, and he's unshaven. He's got a pair of jeans on. You hardly recognize the guy. And what a great guy. So through some mutual acquaintances, we got to know each other a little bit. And Mary and I were back there again last week. I have a new book out, and we were selling a few books and talking to some folks. And I asked Kirk if he would mind coming on to share kind of what's going on in his life. And during that process, I got a hold of one of his videos that actually came out a few years ago. Actually, Brian, my social media guy, is saying, go to Facebook and turn this live. That tends to happen when I first start a Facebook Live. For whatever reason, it's private. And now we're going to go and we're going to make this live so everybody can see. There we go. Now we're public. Thanks for that, Brian. So I was over at a friend's house, and they came across this video, and I stole it from them. No, actually, I borrowed it. Here's the video. It came out a few years ago, and the video is called Monumental, starring Kirk Cameron. You produced that video too, I understand. And as I'm watching it, first of all, I swear as I'm watching this thing, I thought it came out this year. It's so timely and it's so amazing. So first, let me tell the audience a little bit about you, Kirk, for those of you that don't know. 49 years old, you've got 6 kids, 4 of whom are adopted, and I think that's fantastic. Many know you because you grew up in the entertainment industry, starring in Growing Pains and on other shows like Full House. And then I got to know you, not personally, but at least through the theater, because you were working with Dr. Ben Carson when he was running for president, and you came out with this movie called Revive Us. Now, again, this is sort of like a Christian evangelical movie, but here's my wife and I, 2 Jews, supporting evangelicals. So we went to this movie, and it was fantastic. There was Ben Carson. My wife and I both worked for Ben Carson during the presidential campaign. And it's just such an uplifting, spiritual movie that it really made us fans. And then I watched this video last night, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this video is now coming true. And what you talk a little bit about in this video is that maybe Americans have forgotten where we came from and how we got here. And the idea of this movie that you made was to take us back in time to understand where we came from the Pilgrims and the Puritan movement to modern day movement and so forth. And then ultimately you take us to Plymouth, to this amazing statue of our forefathers. So what I'd like to do first is I'm going to show the trailer of this movie so people can see. It's about a minute long. Great. So Brian, if you can cue that trailer, that would be great, and we'll show that. Then I want you to tell us a little bit about...
There's nothing like bones to remind you of your heritage.
The set of ideas that is being implemented and advanced this capital at this time is terribly frightening to people who are students of history.
And when you look at the Roman Empire, the parallels to what is going on in America absolutely frightening.
And the question is, are we going to go the right path ourselves, or are we going to continue down the wrong path that so many nations have fallen into?
I can't save your soul. I can't promise forever. Hey, yeah, I can save my soul.
Wow, that is so powerful. So, Kirk, this was done a few years ago. Why'd you make this movie?
You know, Jeff. I've got the hair on my arms is standing up, and it's not because it's cold. It's because the message of that movie that I made 10 years ago is so chilling that it sends shivers down my spine. I'm in Oregon right now because we see our country on fire. We see our cities burning. We're being told with things like critical theory and other things that we are so divided, that we are split into groups of oppressors and the oppressed, and it just feels like this brainwashing that's coming over a nation. And some of us are just waking up to the fact that this has been well underway for not just 10 years since I made Monumental, but decades and decades. And it's everywhere within the educational system. It's saturating our legal system, political systems, and even into our churches and houses of worship. And it's chilling. I'm sorry, you asked me why I made the movie. Because I have 6 kids, and I'm concerned about the world that our children are going to inherit. And everywhere that I turned 10 years ago, people were telling me that the world's going to hell. Economically, we were in maybe 16, 17 trillion dollars of debt. We're much further into that now. Politically, things were corrupt. Look where we are today. And now we're dealing with racial issues and so many other things that we weren't dealing with so significantly then. And it all indicates that we are dangerously close to the edge of the cliff, I believe. And I couldn't agree more that the message of that film is relevant. I think we're seeing the more of the fulfillment of my concerns 10 years ago right now than I even had at that point.
Absolutely. You know, I learned a lot while I was watching this film. And I know during that film, you kept saying to the various people that were narrating areas where you were touring in England and then in Plymouth, et cetera, that I was not taught this in school. I didn't know this. And one of the things, I'm involved in education. I started a charter school that's up and running now, and I've been on a school board for many years. One of the things that I didn't know is that early on in our country, the U.S. Congress actually printed Bibles and distributed those Bibles to schools. And I didn't know that, because now we're taught that there cannot be Bibles in the school. There cannot be any mention of religion or God. Yet our founders were deeply religious people, but we're not told that. Why is that?
Well, you know, I'm not. I don't have a bunch of letters after my name that qualify me as an expert on these things. I'm certainly not a historian, but we have great historians, and we have all the information at our fingertips through the internet now. And I have the resources to be able to go to England and begin retracing the escape route of the Pilgrims. They were, why they went to Holland, and why they came here to North America. It's clear to me, based on what I've seen, when you go back to original source documents, that there is just a rewriting of history. There's just a new narrative that's being pushed upon a nation of people. And now it's becoming clearer and clearer when you understand groups that are self-declared Marxists, trained Marxists. When you see forth by guys like Saul Alinsky and others for socialism taking over a free capitalist society, it's just the playbook. You open the playbook and you see step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and it's all playing out. And I'm not a guy who thinks there's a conspiracy behind everything, but if you 6 months ago, if you had told me 10 years ago, let's just 6 months ago, that schools would be closed down, that our houses of worship would be closed, that our businesses and the economy that booming would be just flying, and so many of the other draconian things that are happening with this virus in terms of, and then you find out that the data is not supporting the narrative, and that the narrative is being contradicted when you go to a different sector like the riots and this, and you start to realize there's something very fishy going on. And I don't know all the details of what that is, but it sure smells a lot like revolutionary smoke. And where there's smoke, there's usually always fire. And I think that it's time that people like us, you certainly doing so much. I'm trying to do what I can, but people need to wake up. I think we're asleep and not really realizing that freedom is on the line. And if we don't stand up and we don't speak up and we don't vote for freedom, we're not going to have the opportunity to much longer. And I don't mean to sound alarmist, but at what point do you sound the alarm? If you wait too long, and the people that I respect and trust are credible people, are sounding the alarm.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a part in your movie, I didn't even know this place existed, and it's called, it's in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and it's a statue to our forefounders, really. Right. And Brian, I'm going to have Brian play a little clip of this statue because it's fascinating. It really gives the history of our country and what the matrix of liberty is that allows us to be successful and different from every other country that has ever existed. Brian, can you play that?
The National Monument to the Forefathers, the largest granite monument in the United States, was dedicated in 1889 to honor the English settlers who landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts. The monument's dedication reads, "Erected by a grateful people in remembrance of their labors, sacrifices, and sufferings for the cause of civil and religious liberty." The monument, 181 feet tall, features several figures depicting virtues the Pilgrims brought to America in 1620. The largest figure, Faith, is 36 feet tall and weighs 180 tons. The monument also features depictions of morality, law, education, and liberty.
So I was just so impressed, and you have a like a docent that leads you through there and teaches you so much about it. And there's statues that are labeled faith, morality, law, mercy, education, wisdom, and it really just encompasses everything about the founding of our country. I see we lost Kirk, and if we don't get him back, that's fine. I'll finish up for him. But having him with us is great, and we'll do this again when he's local and his Wi-Fi is better. But this video that he made 10 years ago, it's called Monumental. I imagine you can buy it on Amazon, buy the DVD. I borrowed the DVD from somebody, and it was almost scary how relevant this is to current day, where you have our country literally is on fire. We have riots and protests in the streets, and it's crazy what's going on. Welcome back, Kirk. Sorry, we lost you for a minute. And so this place in Plymouth is really a special place, and it really encapsulates the founding of our countries. And they talk about our forefathers versus our founders. So most of us are much more familiar with the founders, those that wrote the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. But our forefathers, the Pilgrims that were persecuted in England, went across to Holland, came back to England. They just got their butts kicked until finally they made it to America, really set the stage for what came later. So you've got 6 kids. What are you doing for their education?
Well, our children now are 22, 21, 20, 19, and 17. So a few of my kids are married, and we homeschooled all of our kids when they were younger. They went to a private school for the first few years. We homeschooled through the majority of their education, and then a couple of our kids returned to a private school for the last portion of their education, and one is off at college right now. So
wonderful. I always think of you as this young guy, but I forgot you're old like us. Now,
yeah,
you grew up kind of around a lot of Hollywood people. How were you treated and how were you accepted?
So I grew up around Hollywood folks since I was about 9 years old, and at 14 is when growing pains started, and that went all the way through till I was about 20, 21, and I was married at that time. And Mike Seaver has been so good to me. That's the reason I think we're even talking right now. And so I have a good relationship with the entertainment industry because it's served as a platform to be able to advance not only entertainment, but the values that I think are important for our country. However, there is a certain sector of the entertainment industry and Hollywood that wants to have nothing to do with guys like you and me, people who espouse these kinds of values. So the entertainment industry is a very powerful platform. It's one of those culture creators, a giant machine that is very useful to advance some kind of ideology. And people might not think that it's being used that way, but of course it is. It's one of the ways that ideas are advanced in this country.
So I want to be respectful for your time, and I know you've got a lot of other things going on. Can you tell us a little bit about what project you're working on now?
Sure. So let's see. I think you would find this really interesting. I'm up here right now with Pastor Rob McCoy from Godspeak Church. We are talking
give him a big hug for me.
Okay, I will. And we're talking with people, capture some of the stories of ministers, of business owners, of school board members, of police officers, husbands and wives of these folks, and telling their story of what has been happening in their communities, in their American cities over the last 6 months. And it's just shocking, the stories. And they're feeling like they're in this, almost like they're living in a bad movie. And we're trying to get their stories out there to people. And on Sunday, October 18th, we're going to be broadcasting live from a church in California. Churches and assembling in churches has been deemed non-essential by our governor. And we are going to be 2,000 people strong inside the church. And we're going to be singing, we're going to be speaking publicly the things that many people have only been comfortable talking about in private. We're going to talk about what we think about the direction our nation has been taking, what we think about what our governor has been saying about worship and church, and we're going to be talking about what is truly essential. Church is not non-essential. Faith is not non-essential. Judeo-Christian values are not non-essential. They're the most essential thing we could possibly have. It's what our nation's built on. It's what will sustain our nation and our freedom and our future for our kids. So the event's called Non-Essential. And all of us non-essentials need to gather around and watch this event and discuss these things together, pray, and ultimately make sure that we show up on November 3rd and we vote for what is the most essential thing, and that is the direction of the future of our country. Wonderful. Godspeed to you, Kirk. Thank you for taking the time to share with us, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Well, Jeff, thank you. Thank you for all the good work that you're doing on so many fronts with this podcast, this video cast, and also the medical help that you're giving to people in your medical practice. And I certainly appreciate your friendship. God bless you. Keep up the great work. You got it. We'll talk soon. Stay safe up there. All right. Thank you. All right. Take care. All right. Listen, wow, that was something. He is something special, isn't he? Thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you that watched, please share this message.
we really need to get this out to as many people as we can. If everybody who's watching shares it, then it'll be shared on your network as well. And wow, what a guy, what a guy. Each of us doing what we can to spread the word of liberty, to try to make a little bit of a difference. So thank you again for joining me tonight for RX for Liberty, and stay tuned next time and we'll bring you some more good guests. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.